Palimpsest Press celebrates its 20th anniversary this year. Welcome, Aimée.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's good to have you here. So congratulations on shepherding Palimpsest to its third decade. Did you imagine yourself as a publisher before taking it on?
Absolutely not. I actually wanted to be a writer. I was a wannabe writer back in the day. And I didn't really know anything about publishing until I had to go back to school when I was 36. And my company closed and I needed to find something new. So I went back to school. I went to Ryerson. They have a publishing program. And it wasn't until then that I had any idea of being behind the scenes in writing as opposed to being a writer.
Tell us a bit about your roles are in the press.
Certainly. The biggest role would have to be the acquiring and editing role. That takes up the bulk of my time. So you're working 3 years ahead at a minimum. Usually about 3 years between when we sign a person and when we actually publish the book. So there's a lot of reading of submissions going on, acquiring the author, getting the contracts all together, and then the actual editing process usually takes about a year and a half. And then we move on to the design and layout phase, and there's sales teams that we have to coordinate with, and marketing strategies that have to be plotted out. That usually comes about a year before the book is published, year to 6 months. And then 6 months before the book is actually published, we're working on getting everything marketing wise put together. For the company itself, there are a lot of benefits to being outside of Toronto. We're finding authors that we wouldn't normally find. As far as what it means, it really means that we can showcase people who wouldn't necessarily be found. You'll notice if you peruse like the CBC website or Quill and Choir, they tend to focus a lot of their effort on people in the big cities. And it really does mean that people from smaller towns or people from outside of those centers tend to get a little left behind, a little forgotten about. We've been lucky, the two that have been printed, they've been participating in a lot of online readings. David Lee, who is an author from BC, he applied for and got a spot on Canada Performs, which was huge for us. And he did a live reading and Q&A. It was really interesting. We had over 270 people visit, which would be more than an average launch. So that was quite something. And I've been selling from the website. So his book has actually been doing incredibly well considering there are no bookstores open. I hit the post office once a week and we're mailing out books. So if anybody wants a book, feel free to go to the website.
So Palimpsest has now been owned by 2 women. Do you find that outlook influences your decisions and your working practice in any way?
Do I find that being owned by women influences how we choose our books? Is that basically what you're asking? You kind of cut out on me a little. I don't think so. As far as acquisitions go, we actually have 2 male editors and 3 female editors. I don't know that it does. About the only thing that it maybe informs is this idea that marginalized voices need to be heard. And, if we start with just female voices tend to get overshadowed by the male voices in the literary community, for sure. So we're conscious of that, and we make sure that our list is balanced, both male and female. And then that led to realizing, especially early on when I took over the company, that we had a very unbalanced list when it came to people of color, Indigenous people. We just didn't have anybody. It was a purely white list. And when I took over, I noticed this and I said, this can't stand. We need to change, we need to change that. And so I think just being a woman, you recognize that, you know, your own voice is not necessarily heard all the time. Who else's voices aren't being heard, and how can we help that? How can we change it so that other voices are being heard?